The Old South whispers through the moss-draped trees of South Carolina, where history is soaked in blood, betrayal, and restless spirits. Here, every crumbling mansion and moonlit graveyard hides a story too dark to remain buried. If you walk the cobblestone streets of Charleston at night, you might feel unseen hands brush against your arm or hear the soft weeping of those who never left. Tonight, we journey deep into South Carolina's most haunted places, where the past is not gone. It lingers, waiting for you. 1. The abandoned South Carolina Lunatic Asylum, Columbia, South Carolina. Few places in the state carry such a heavy, suffocating aura as the old South Carolina Lunatic Asylum. Built in 1828, it was once hailed as a beacon of progressive mental health care. But as decades passed, it devolved into overcrowding, abuse, and despair. Patients endured crude treatments, ice baths, electroshock therapy, and confinement in isolation cells that seemed to swallow the mind whole. The asylum was finally abandoned, but the echoes of its suffering remain. Urban explorers describe long corridors lined with peeling paint and rusting gurneys, where whispers slither through the air, though no one else is present. The smell of mildew and old iron clings to every wall, and some rooms carry a chill so sharp it feels like knives grazing the skin. Reports of shadow figures are common. Dark silhouettes appear at the ends of hallways, vanishing as soon as approached. Others have heard desperate cries, pounding on locked doors, and the eerie sound of children's laughter echoing through the empty wards. Paranormal investigators claim to have captured voices on recorders, pleas for help, fragmented sentences, and, chillingly, screams that erupt out of silence. To stand in the asylum is to feel the weight of countless forgotten souls pressing down on you, begging to be remembered. The building may be abandoned, but the suffering it once contained refuses to be silenced. Step inside, and you may find the line between sanity and terror growing perilously thin. 2. Alice Flagg's grave, Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Beneath the coastal winds and shifting sands of Pawleys Island lies a love story that ended in heartbreak and gave rise to one of South Carolina's most enduring ghost legends. Alice Flagg was a young woman from a prominent family in the mid-1800s. When she fell in love with a man considered beneath her station, her wealthy relatives forbade the match. But Alice, determined to keep him close, wore the simple gold engagement ring he gave her on a ribbon around her neck. When her family discovered it, they tore the ring away and sent her into isolation. Consumed by grief, Alice soon fell ill with fever. She died before ever being reunited with her lover, and her body was buried in All Saints Episcopal Church Cemetery, her grave marked only by a plain stone etched with the name Alice. Locals say her spirit still wanders the area, endlessly searching for her lost ring. Visitors at her grave often feel icy fingers tugging at their hands, as though Alice herself is reaching out. Some claim to see her ghostly figure, clad in white, drifting among the gravestones before fading into the night. Others leave rings on her marker as offerings, small tokens of the love she was denied. But there's a warning: those who disrespect her grave sometimes leave with more than they bargained for. Strange illnesses, broken engagements, and a lingering sense of dread often follow. Would you dare to visit Alice's grave under the cover of night, knowing she might mistake you for the love she never found? 3. Abbeville Opera House, Abbeville, South Carolina. In the quiet town of Abbeville stands an elegant building that seems untouched by time, the Abbeville Opera House. Opened in 1908, this small but proud theater has hosted generations of performers and audiences. Yet behind the velvet curtains and polished wood, something lingers that cannot be explained. Actors and staff have long whispered about a presence that refuses to leave the stage. During rehearsals, performers often sense someone watching from the balcony, even when the seats are empty. Stagehands report footsteps pacing the catwalks above, the sound of boots crossing wooden planks, though no one is there. Some have even felt invisible hands brush their shoulders, as if urging them toward the spotlight. The most unsettling encounters happen after dark. Doors open and close on their own. Lights flicker as though responding to unseen cues, and faint laughter echoes from the wings. A few actors claim they've seen a ghostly figure in period dress, sometimes seated quietly in the audience, sometimes drifting across the stage as though still waiting for an encore. Locals believe it may be the spirit of a long-forgotten performer who died suddenly during the opera house's early years, bound to the place where their final act was left unfinished. Standing in the empty theater, you can feel it, a hush that isn't silence, but expectation, like the air itself is waiting for the curtain to rise again. 4. The Pink House, Charleston, South Carolina. Nestled on Chalmers Street, the Pink House looks deceptively quaint. Built around 1712, it is one of the oldest structures in Charleston, its rosy walls glowing warmly under the street lamps. But beauty can be deceiving. This house holds a history of sin and sorrow. The Pink House was once a tavern and brothel, where sailors and pirates spent their coin and their nights. The women who worked here often suffered lives of violence and despair, their cries echoing against the brick walls long after they had gone. Some believe it is their spirits that linger, replaying their grief in endless loops. Visitors have reported hearing soft, mournful singing drifting from the upper windows, even when the house is empty. Others describe the vision of a pale woman standing at the door, her expression hollow, her figure fading when approached. On rare occasions, shadows dart across the walls inside, moving independently of light. Local legend claims the Pink House curses those who enter with strange misfortunes, sudden illnesses, shattered romances, unexplained accidents. The building still stands, inviting passers-by to admire its charm. But if you look too closely, you might just glimpse the sorrow carved into its walls. 5. The Old Exchange and Provost Dungeon, Charleston, South Carolina. Beneath the polished exterior of Charleston's Old Exchange lies a dungeon where the walls still seem to breathe with misery. Built in 1767, this grand building once hosted elegant balls on the upper floors, while the Provost Dungeon below served as a holding cell for pirates, prisoners of war, and revolutionaries. The contrast between glittering candlelight above and despair below makes its history all the more unsettling. The dungeon was damp, windowless, and overcrowded. Prisoners often died chained to the walls, their bodies left to rot in the stagnant air. Some whispered that the screams from beneath the city never truly faded. Today, Visitors on tours often report feeling sudden drops in temperature, hearing heavy boots pacing the stone floors, or catching glimpses of shadowy figures lurking at the edges of the torchlight. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from those who claim to hear moaning in the dark, accompanied by the clanking of chains. Guides have admitted that even they refuse to linger after hours. The sense of being watched is too strong, too oppressive. And if you listen closely, you might hear faint voices calling out names that have long since been erased from history. Standing in that suffocating chamber, you realize the dungeon has not been abandoned. It has simply been waiting. 6. Poogan's Porch, Charleston, South Carolina. On the corner of Queen Street, Poogan's Porch looks inviting, a warm southern restaurant housed in a charming Victorian home. But even as diners savor shrimp and grits, a deeper story lingers within the creaking walls. The house once belonged to sisters Zoe and Elizabeth St. Amand. Zoe was a school teacher, painfully shy and reclusive. After her sister's death, Zoe spiraled into despair, pacing endlessly along the porch, calling her sister's name. When Zoe herself died, locals assumed her restless heart might finally be at peace. They were wrong. Guests and staff report seeing Zoe's figure, still dressed in her old black morning gown, roaming the upstairs hallways. Some hear the sound of footsteps pacing back and forth. Others catch glimpses of her face in the upstairs windows, watching the street below. Dogs often bark uncontrollably near the restaurant, their hackles raised, as though sensing the sorrow that clings to the house. And then there is Poogan, the restaurant's namesake, a neighborhood dog who once slept on the porch. Even after death, visitors still feel a furry presence brush against their legs beneath the tables, accompanied by the sound of soft panting. A friendly spirit, perhaps, but when paired with Zoe's hollow-eyed apparition, dinner at Poogan's Porch can turn from comforting to chilling in an instant. 7. Dock Street Theater, Charleston, South Carolina. Few places in South Carolina combine elegance and terror as seamlessly as the Dock Street Theater. First built in 1736, it has been destroyed by fire, rebuilt as a hotel, and finally restored as a working theater. But beneath its grand chandeliers and velvet seats, spirits perform a far darker play. The most famous ghost is Nettie, a young woman who once lived in Charleston's seedy district. She dreamed of wealth and sophistication, but her life ended tragically when she was struck by lightning while standing on the balcony of the Planters Hotel, the very site where the theater now stands. Today, actors and guests swear they've seen her drifting through the balconies in a vivid red dress, her eyes searching the audience for something she never found in life. Another presence lurks backstage, the shadowy figure of Junius Brutus Booth, father of John Wilkes Booth. Known for his brilliance and his madness, Booth performed here in the 1800s. Actors describe hearing his booming voice echoing through the rafters, even when the theater is empty. Some refuse to rehearse alone, fearing the whisper of lines spoken by a ghostly rival. Imagine sitting in the audience as the lights flicker, and for a split second, you're sure you see an extra figure in the cast, pale, silent, and staring directly at you. The play always ends, but the ghosts never take their final bow. 8. The White Point Garden, Charleston, South Carolina. By daylight, White Point Garden is a place of beauty, oak trees stretching wide, Spanish moss swaying lazily in the breeze, and cannons standing like relics of another age. But when the sun dips below the horizon, the garden transforms into a stage for Charleston's most restless spirits. This peaceful park was once the site of brutal pirate executions. In the early 1700s, captured pirates, including the infamous Stade Bonnet, the gentleman pirate, were hanged from the trees that still stand today. Locals say the soil here is soaked with curses and blood, and that the condemned never truly left. After dark, visitors describe hearing the creak of ropes swaying in the wind. Though no ropes can be seen, some have spotted figures in tattered coats and tri-cornered hats pacing beneath the branches, their forms dissolving when approached. Others feel sharp, sudden chills like icy fingers tracing their necks, as if someone is measuring them for the noose. Perhaps the most chilling reports come from those who claim to hear muffled cries, the kind of desperate pleas that echo seconds before death. Would you linger in this garden at midnight, with the shadows of the hanged swaying silently above you? 9. Old Charleston Jail, Charleston, South Carolina. The old city jail stands like a fortress of misery, its iron bars and weather-stained stone holding echoes of unspeakable suffering. From 1802 until 1939, thousands of prisoners passed through its crumbling corridors. Pirates, Civil War captives, and some of Charleston's most notorious criminals. Few left with their lives, and fewer still found peace after death. The most infamous inmate was Lavinia Fisher, often called America's first female serial killer. Alongside her husband, she lured travelers into her boarding house, serving poisoned tea before murdering them in their sleep. When Lavinia was finally hanged on the gallows outside the jail, witnesses say she cursed the city with her final breath. If anyone has a message for the devil, tell me now. I'll deliver it myself. Visitors today report seeing her face pressed against the barred windows, her dress swaying as if caught in a phantom wind. Inside, shadows flit across the decaying walls, and the sound of dragging chains echoes where no prisoner walks. Guides have felt icy fingers clutch their arms, while others swear they've heard Lavinia's mocking laughter carried through the darkness. Standing in those halls, you might sense it too that the jail is not merely haunted. It is alive with anger, holding the weight of centuries of despair. And once you enter, the air itself seems to demand silence, as though listening for your heartbeat. 10. The Battery Carriage House Inn, Charleston, South Carolina. At first glance, the Battery Carriage House Inn is charming, a genteel boutique hotel resting on Charleston's historic waterfront. But within its elegant walls, guests whisper of encounters with shadows that should not exist. Room 8 is infamous. Visitors describe waking in the dead of night, unable to move, as a headless torso looms above their bed. The figure doesn't attack. It simply lingers, swaying as if suspended between worlds, before fading into the dark. Some believe it to be the spirit of a soldier decapitated during the Civil War, forever bound to the site of his final agony. In Room 10, the hauntings are gentler, but no less disturbing. Guests awaken to the pressure of a body lying beside them, an unseen companion who breathes, sighs, and shifts beneath the covers. When the lights flick on, the bed is empty, but the air feels heavy, as though something has just slipped away. The owners, far from denying these tales. Admit openly that their inn is haunted. They call their specters gentle spirits. But when you're trapped beneath the gaze of a headless apparition, the word gentle might not come to mind. Would you still check in for the night, knowing you may not be alone when you close your eyes? South Carolina wears its haunted past like a second skin, stitched together with sorrow, violence, and unfinished stories. From the crumbling cells of Charleston's jail to the lonely grave of Alice Flagg, each place is a reminder that some wounds never heal and some voices never fall silent. Perhaps you've walked those cobblestone streets or stood beneath the moss-covered oaks without realizing the unseen eyes upon you. The ghosts of the Old South are not just stories, they are shadows, waiting for the living to listen. So the next time you find yourself in South Carolina, pause for a moment, feel the air, listen closely, and ask yourself, are you truly alone, or has something already found you?